welcome to Sarama Resources Live Investment Summit today, hosted by Six. I'm joined today by Andrew Dinning, their Managing Director and CEO. Andrew's going to walk us through a company presentation, and after, we'll be taking questions live using the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. If you'd like to participate in today's event, please feel free to ask any question you like using that tool. As always, this summit is being recorded and it's going to be available in the coming days on Six.com. But without further ado, Andrew, I'd like to pass things back to you to get us started.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Cam, and welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be able to take you through the drill results we've put out to date from the drill program we commenced in May this year. So without further ado, I'll get into it. I get this presentation has been filed, so if anyone wants to look at the disclosures, feel free to look on our website, so I won't go through that. Just, I guess, to quickly recap on Sarama, we're a dual listed company, so we're listed on the TSX and the ASX. We are located, our operations are located in southwest Burkina Faso. We have quite a large 100% owned land position there in the Hyundai Belt, which is one of the most prolific gold belts in Burkina Faso and one of the most prolific in West Africa. The value of the company is underpinned by a multi-million ounce resource on our Sanutura Project. And I think importantly on that resource, which is just shy of 3 million ounces at this point in time, about a third of the resource is oxide and 2/3 is over 2 grams. I think recently, post the ASX listing, which happened in May of this year, we commenced our first major drill program in 5 years. And I think anyone that follows the company will probably understand the delays that we've had just with respect to restrictive JV and what have you. However, that's in the rear view mirror now. So we've completed 20,000 metres of a 50,000 metre planned program on Sanutura. Of that, we've probably put out about half the results, of which I'll talk about some of that shortly. But I think importantly, the drilling we have been doing, it's shallow, kind of high value targeted drilling. We're just really looking at oxides, near surface mineralisation outside the current mineral resource. The drilling has so far delivered some pretty good results. We've got a new geological model for targeting, which is quite exciting, but also quite a few substantial hits that sit outside the resource that I think will feed into that in the longer term. So getting into it, looking a bit more closely at the Sanutura project. As mentioned, the resource inventory is just shy of 3 million ounces, but importantly, at a 1 gram cut, we have about 2.3 million ounces at 2 grams or better. So there is a high grade element to the resource, which is important from a development point of view down the track. And also oxide hosted gold accounts for about a third of the resource. And once again, that's important for looking longer term and on the development of the project. As mentioned, we commenced our first major drill program in some time, and we're about 20,000 metres into that. Probably another 30,000 metres to complete on the first phase. And the drilling that we put out showing, we've been hitting near surface high grade mineralisation, and as mentioned before, we're getting pretty decent results. So the main focus of this drilling is to significantly lift the pit constrained oxide resource, which currently sits just shy of 1 million ounces, and it's just basically focused on shallow high value material. We are also looking to identify additional regional greenfields targets out of where we've been working, and I'll briefly touch on that at the end of this presentation. So looking a little more closely at the Tankoro deposit, which sits in the southern part of the project, that you can see on the image here. It's in the southern portion. It's adjacent to Endeavour's Bantu project. Of that project, we have the Tankoro deposit. So the primary resource areas here are the MM and the MC prospects, and between those two deposit areas, I host about 80% of the ounces in this area. The drilling we have been doing has been, some of it has been in between modelled mineralisation at MM and in the footwall of the MC area. We've discovered new high-grade gold mineralisation within the MM outside modelled areas, but also in the footwall of the MC as well. I think if you look at some of the historical results we've had in MM and MC, you'll see that there is a higher grade element, and that's really what we've been targeting in on with the drilling. So it's really just focused on adding high value material to the resource. So moving along to a little bit closer on the deposit, obviously focus on oxide resource growth. It is a big system. We've got contiguous mineralisation for over 12 kilometres, and it's around 2.5 million ounces. And within that, there's also a high-grade components. About 2 million of those 2.5 are above 2 grams, and 70% sit within 150 metres of surface. Most of the strike's only been drilled to about 70 metres, and our view is that there's ample gaps to discover new mineralised zones in between where we have drilled in the past. And I think anyone who's been following the news releases that we put out, they pretty much support what our thesis is. So really on the upside here is extensions to the current resource, adding oxides, and growing all the near surface high valued material. Looking at, I guess, the first news release we put out, which was in August, we've drilled a whole new zone in the southern part of the project area. It's called Obi. We had drilled this originally looking for sub-vertical structures, and we were of the view that it may well have been flat. So the last drill program was designed on that basis. And what we've found out of that is we do have quite a high grade flat structure running in the south there. And I think importantly for us, we've delineated about 950 metres along strike, but it's also open for about 1.8 kilometres along trend where it doesn't have a drill hole in it. It's also been drilled about 300 metres down dip now. We've got multiple mineralised intersections in some holes, so there's scope for stacked loads as well, which will obviously increase the ounces per vertical metre in the area. And we've also extended the oxide profile to 80 metres depth in this area, and that's also a pretty important metric for us come mining time. I think when you look at some of the grades that we've realised in that area, they're pretty solid. 12 at close to 3, 10 at close to 3, and I think importantly 7 at 11.5 that ended in mineralisation. So we think there's still a fair bit more runway on this, and I think when you look at a section on the area, this is what really does get us quite interested. So you can see through here the traditional mineralisation that we have drilled, which is porphyry dikes, is sub-vertical in this particular area, the lower tenor. What we've got here is a flat structure that's cutting across the geological fabric. We see a lot of scope for down dip extensions, possible enrichment zones where you can see there that area that's highlighted where the flat structure looks like it should intercept the sub-vertical structures. Obviously, we have a lot of open space along trend in front of it. And I think importantly, when we look for analogues of this within the belt, probably the closest analogue we see is Endeavour's Kari Pump deposit at their Hyundai mine. The maiden resource on Kari Pump was about 1 million ounces at 2.5 grams. So that had 100,000 metres of drilling in it when they published that. We've only 4,000 into this so far. But I think importantly, this is blind to surface. It sits in between where we've previously drilled. We've got 2 more areas that look like this, so there's still a lot of work to go. We only drilled that in June, and given our season, exploration season is governed by the rains, we did stop drilling late July, early August, so this will be a pretty high priority target come next season. Looking at the second area, this is in the northern part of the Tankoro deposit area. So the MM prospect, so this particular deposit area hosts about 1.4 million ounces at this point in time. This looks quite complex, and I guess structurally it is a bit. What we had seen in historical drilling was some pretty good grades and pretty good intersects that we couldn't really model up or marry up to anything. So we put additional drilling into those areas and identified new zones in between existing modelled zones. This is actually quite a substantial area. You can see the scale bar at the bottom there is 100 metres. So once again, we think there's plenty of scope in between where we have modelled stuff up to add new material, and that's pretty much what this drilling's showing up. It's pretty high tenor, so 7 at 8, 12 at 4.5, 11 at 4.5. That's all shallow. It's all in oxide, so it's all super accretive to the development picture of the project. And importantly, all this material would fall into an existing pit shell as it stands now. So all of this adds a lot of value to the project. It's all new and it's all outside modelled areas. Looking at the third area, which is kind of halfway along that Tankore deposit area, we drilled, and once again, this goes back to the thesis of thinking there's a lot more scope to find material between where we have drilled historically, and this is a good example of that now. You can see the 2 tracks historically that we've been drilling in the red there that have been modelled up. Here, where we've drilled in between those tracks. We're about 600 metres off trend there, and we drilled 34 metres at 1.65 from 18 in oxide. So this is a pretty exciting development as well. So this once again supports our thesis that there's plenty of scope to add new material in between where we have been drilling historically. I think one of the things that does get lost with this project, because it is such a big system, historically, particularly in a joint venture with Acacia come Barrick, they've just focused on a couple of areas and they didn't really step back and look at the project in totem, which we've had the opportunity to do over the last couple of years while we haven't been able to drill and identify areas like this. So all these areas are pretty important. We think this is probably a cross-linking structure. Where these things intersect is like at the MM and MC, where we typically get a grade and ounces blowout. But really, these results highlight the potential for new discoveries and resource extension. But once again, if you look at the intercepts there, they're all in oxides. They're all outside the resource, and they all really, play into the narrative that we're running, which is there's a lot more scope to add material. And I think this fourth area here, once again, we've drilled into the footwall in the MC area. The MC does have some, fairly cherry ripe areas to look, but in this particular area here, we've drilled in the footwall. Pretty substantial thickness, a pretty reasonable grade, and all in oxide. We do have a couple of significant intercepts there. You can see 17 at 1.4 ended in mineralisation at 43 metres within oxides. 19 at a gram also ended in mineralisation. So the grades and the tenor that we're seeing is roughly in line or a bit higher than our average resource grade in this particular area. But I think importantly, this sits outside the resource. It's in the footwall. It's highly accretive. All of this will get mined regardless, and it all at ounces. So the 4 releases that I've just walked through, the highlights of then. Obviously, you can find those on our website where there's a lot more detail. But it doesn't represent a lot of drilling. So those 4 releases represent maybe half of the drilling that we've done since May. But it's 4 new areas. They're all outside the mineralised zone, and they're dotted along that mineralised area. So we think there's a lot of scope to grow these, and they'll add super accretive, high value ounces to the development picture and to the resource. The money that we spend now has a disproportionately large impact on what we're doing, because we're already over the hurdle from a critical mass size from a development point of view. We have enough ounces now to support an economic study, and really the work we're doing now is hitting all the low-hanging fruit and high priority targets. And speaking of high priority targets, looking ahead to next year, given the current state of the capital markets, how much drilling will get done before Christmas, we're unsure. But if you're looking ahead, though, to next season, the Bondi deposit, which was an acquisition from Orzone Gold, has around a 500,000 ounce resource on it at the moment. we think there's a lot more runway on this. There's 150,000 ounces modelled there that's unclassified, that just needs some infill drilling on it. But if you look at the historical intercepts on here, where we have 50 at 5 and 66 at 3.8, 60 at 3.7, they're just some of the intercepts that we've got into this deposit that were drilled by Orezone. But I think the more interesting thing about this is it's very well drilled in the top 70 to 100 metres. We've remodeled all Orezone's raw data, and I guess what does kind of stick out to us is in the northern areas, you can see the higher grade resource blocks. So the pink and purple you see there are 2.5 to 5 gram blocks in the block model. I guess the question we have is what sits under those high grade areas on the left hand side of the screen. There's no drilling at depth in those areas. You can see the drill traces there. They're typically 80 to 100 metres. And also in the centre area there, where smart cross section, that's been drilled to just under 300 metres. But once again, it's very good tenor, so we're pretty keen to see what's going on at depth in that particular area as well. So this is a very high priority target for us that we didn't get to this season, but it'll be hopefully early next season. And then looking more regionally, we also have a lot of targets within the area that are, I guess, not as high a priority, although they are very good targets. When we've prioritised our drilling, we've gone with drilling that gives a high probability of very high quality results. That's obviously the first stuff we're going to drill. When you look at it from a regional point of view, probably our best target is Zanawa. We have historical intercepts there in oxides, 22 at close to 4 from 5 metres, and a number of other hits. So that's a particularly interesting area to us. It's about 4 kilometres from Bondi. It's a different mineralising event. It's more akin to Endeavour's Golden Hill project to the northwest, that particular area. We have a stacked high-grade gold quartz vein system to the east called Bamako that we've done some drilling in there historically and had some pretty solid hits. So the challenge there will be continuity, but if we do hit, we get good hits like 15 at 6, 8 at 18, so they're quite significant. And then importantly, we have another area called the Eastern Corridor, or Tankoro East, which we refer to it internally. We have around 25 kilometres strike in quartz veining there. A small inventory on it. That's probably a longer term target area for us. Our view is if you've got mineralisation over 25 kilometres, the chances of finding something of material value and size there are quite good. But looking at the geology there, it's going to take a lot more work to unravel that story. So that's really a bit of an update on where we're at. Just a quick brief. Obviously, a lot more detail in the news releases, but that's the that's where we're at this point in time. So I'll open it up to questions now that people may well have.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. As a reminder, I'd like to let everyone in the audience know that you can ask questions using the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. But the first question we have, Andrew, is what are majors in the region that you'd court to invest in the project?
Yeah, it's actually, there's been quite a lot of consolidation in Burkina Faso. We've seen Endeavour very active in country. So the companies we would most likely be talking with, and one of which was a shareholder before they were bought by Endeavour, was Teranga, who were a neighbour to us and very good to work with. Semifo as well, and obviously Endeavour's bought both those companies. So really the main company for us to talk to is Endeavour Mining. So they have the Bantu project immediately to the west of us. So if I just quickly flick back to the slides, probably don't need to go back to this particular slide. You can see the Endeavour's Bantu project is just here, and Sarama's Tankoro deposit here is on Sanutura. So in this particular area there's around 4 million ounces within a 5 or 6 kilometre radius. So our view is all of that needs to come together, and we think at some point in the future that'll happen. And I guess the ultimate question for us will be who owns what. But if that project area is put together and it's all a natural fit, then that makes this a 5.5 million ounce project at this point in time, with a lot of runway left to run on the exploration front.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Next question, what drill result is most interesting to you from this last drill campaign?
Yeah, I think we put out 4 news releases and all 4 are very interesting in their own way. But I think probably the most interesting one for us is that flat zone at Obi in the southern part of the project. It's high tenor, it's in oxides. It's definitely a different mineralising event to what we see. The tenor is very good, and being flat, it has the potential to add quite a few low-cost ounces. So I think for us, that's a whole new geological analogue that we can apply to the area. It's also blind, so there's a lot of scope to find more of these things. So we think the chance of there just being one discrete vein, which is what it looks like at the moment, is a flat quartz vein based on what we see in sample coming out in the air core. Being one discrete area, 900 metres by 300 metres, being the only thing we think is probably fairly low. So we think that's probably the most interesting, the most exciting out of all the drill results. And I guess second after that is, we've drilled, that quite significant intercept, 600 metres off trend as well. So that's also particularly interesting.
All right. And what's the timeline on the next round of drilling?
Yeah, look, work in Burkina Faso is seasonal. So as we have a rainy season and dry season, so it's rainy season at the moment. We'd expect to be able to be active in the field again before the end of the year. Obviously, given the markets and how they are at the moment, we'll be circumspect on what our burn rates are. But it's seasonal. It typically runs from November-ish through until June, July, depending when the rains start and finish. So we would hope to get some drilling in before Christmas, but really it'll be the first quarter of next year when we really start looking to drill in earnest.
All right, Andrew. Well, listen, that's all the questions we received for today. So I want to thank you and everyone who's joined us, especially those who've asked questions. But before we wrap up, I'd like to hand things back to you for some closing remarks.
Okay, thanks, Cam. I guess just to kind of round out what was said, where I started, Sarama's view, there's a lot of scope within the land package that we've got to add a lot of, I guess, high-grade, high-value ounces to the resource and the development picture there. I think the drilling that we've put out so far, which represents probably a half of what we've drilled since May, does support that. We've got a whole new exploration analogue to chase now as well with the Obi prospect, so that's very important. But I think the most important thing that we're showing here is that we're adding a lot of new targets, new ounces to the project. They're all shallow, they're all oxides, they're all high value, and that can only lend to the development project down the track. So I think for us, it's been, we're very pleased with the results we've got so far. They're probably in line with or better than what we'd thought we would get. And if we can keep up, I guess, with getting these kind of results, this program will have a decent impact. So historically, our discovery rates have been between 7 and 10 ounces per metre drilled. We're doing a 50,000 metre program, so we'd like to think that we'll get somewhere between 300 and 500,000 additional to the ounces on that. Obviously, we won't know until we've finished and we've modelled everything up, but it's based on historical numbers. Even if we get the bottom end of that, we'll be pretty happy.
All right, then. Well, with that, I think we'll be wrapping up for the day. So, Andrew, I want to thank you again, and I hope you and everyone else has a good rest of the day. Cheers.
Thanks, Cam, and thanks, everybody, for listening in.